Guys on quiz Patente B in English. Topic Segnale di Indicazione. Scheda number 1. Question number 1. Il segnale raffigurato indica l'inizio di un centro abitato. So the right answer is
false.
Okay, so the right answer, of course, it is false. So it says this sign indicates the beginning of the city. It is false because it's just Piacenza and the kilometers remaining on the right side to get to Piacenza. So the one is false. Very good. Now, let's proceed with the number 2. Il segnale raffigurato indica l'inizio di un tratto di strada in salita per raggiungere Monte Compatri.
False.
Correct, it is false. So you say this sign indicates the start point of a road that is climbing to get to Monte Compatri. So the 2, of course, it is false. Why? Because it is the end of the city Monte Compatri. So the 2 is false. So well done. 3. Il segnale raffigurato indica che non è possibile svoltare a sinistra al prossimo incrocio. So what is the answer?
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. It said this sign indicates that it is not possible to turn to the left at the first intersection. So it is vero because at the first intersection, it is senso vietato. So that's why the 3 is vero. Okay, very good. 4. Il segnale raffigurato preavvisa un'area di parcheggio sulla destra. So the right answer is, of course, it is false. So it says this sign warns us of a parking area on the right side. So it is false because on the right side it is a road without exit, and that is the meaning of the sign. So the 4 is false. Very good. Number 5. Il segnale raffigurato indica una strada chiusa.
False.
Very good. It is false. It says this sign indicates a closed road. It is false because this sign represents a tunnel, okay, on the autostrada. So 5 is false. Well done. 6. Il segnale raffigurato indica che nelle vicinanze vi è un'area di sosta per autoveicoli. And the answer is,
False.
of course, it is false. So it said this sign indicates that there is a parking area for motor vehicles nearby. So the 6, of course, it is false. Okay, because this is a filling station on the tangenziale. So the 6 is false. Very good. 7. Il segnale raffigurato preavvisa uno svincolo in cui si deve proseguire diritto per andare a Bologna.
Vero.
Excellent. Of course, it is vero. He said this sign warns us of a junction where you must continue straight to go to Bologna. So it is vero because as we can see, the arrow going straight is headed towards city Bologna. So 7 is vero. Well done. 8. Il segnale raffigurato è posto su una strada a carreggiate separate. And the 8 is,
Vero.
of course, it is vero. He said this sign is placed on a road with separated carriageways. Yes, it is vero because we have 2 carreggiate, one on the left and one on the right. So the 8 is Vero. Well done. 9. Il segnale raffigurato vieta anche ai autobus di raggiungere Avezzano.
Falso.
Of course, it is falso. It says this sign also prohibits buses from reaching Avezzano. It is falso because the prohibition goes for vehicles that transport goods that are heavier than 3.5 tons. That is why you see the circle red with the sign with the vehicle in it. So that's the meaning of it. So the 9 is falso. Very good. 10. Il segnale raffigurato indica una piazzola di sosta sulla destra.
Falso.
Of course it is false. It said this sign indicates a piazzola di sosta on the right. So a piazzola di sosta is the parking lot on the right side. So it is false. Okay, because it is a road without exit on the right side. So that's why the 10 is false. So make sure you like the video, and if you're enjoying the studies, study with Maui the teacher. 11. Il segnale raffigurato invita ad usare prudenza perché possiamo trovare ciclisti che attraversano la carreggiata.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. I said this sign invite us to use caution because we may find cyclists crossing the road, and it is of course vero because it means crossing of bicycles, and it is exactly positioned where the crossing of the bicycles is. So 11 is vero. Well done. 12. Il segnale raffigurato non vale per le biciclette ed i ciclomotori. So the 12 is,
Falso.
of course, it is false. It says this sign does not apply to bicycles and scooter. It is false. It applies to every vehicle. So the 12 is false. Very good. 13. Il segnale raffigurato separato means cancel with the red line, ok, da una striscia rossa, indica la fine di una strada extraurbana principale.
Falso.
No, it is vero. It says if this sign is crossed with the red line, it indicates the end of the main extra urban road. So it is vero. If it is cancelled with
I
the
thought
red line, it is the end of the main extra urban road. So it is vero.
no, I thought it's talking about carreggiata separata.
This sign is carreggiata separata. Yes, it is also the extra urbana principale, which is the
Because of the
tangenziale.
background.
You said?
Is it because of the background blue? Is it because of the background blue?
Yes, because of the background blue, and also because the entrance of the main extra urban road is represented by this sign.
Okay.
Okay, so 13 is vero. Very good. What I'm saying, I explained it in the theory, so you are not supposed to be confused there. Mhm. Everything is there. Okay, 14. Il segnale raffigurato indica l'inizio di un'area pedonale.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. He said this sign indicates the start of a pedestrian area. Of course, it is vero. We can see the sign very clear. Pedestrian area. So it is the beginning of the pedestrian area. So 14 is vero. Well done, you're doing good. 15. Il segnale raffigurato indica che nelle vicinanze c'è un'officina meccanica per veicoli.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. He said this sign indicates that there is a vehicle mechanic workshop nearby. Yes, it is vero, because this sign represents mechanic. Okay, on the tangenziale. So 15 is Vero, well done. 16. Il segnale raffigurato si trova direttamente in corrispondenza delle strisce dell'attraversamento pedonale.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. It says this sign is located directly at the pedestrian crossing stripes. So it is vero because that is exactly where it is positioned, for it is a zebra crossing. So 16 is vero. 17. Il segnale raffigurato preavvisa due incroci vicini.
Vero.
Excellent. Of course, it is vero. He said this sign warns us of a uh, it warns us of two
Two junction.
intersections that are close to each other. So of course it is vero because as we can see we have two intersections, okay, that are close to each other. Okay, so the 17 is absolutely vero, very simple. 18. Il segnale raffigurato è posto su strade extraurbane suddivise in due corsie. And the answer is
Ah,
no, it is vero. He said this sign is placed on extra urban road.
yeah, yeah,
Di-
yeah. It's vero. It's vero.
yes, divided
It's
into two
vero.
lanes. So it is vero.
It's
Well
vero.
done.
It's
Very
vero.
good. Excellent. Number 19. Il segnale raffigurato si può trovare all'inizio di una strada comunale. So the answer is?
Vero. Vero. Vero.
Of course, it is vero.
Strada comunale.
Excellent.
Sì.
He said this sign can be found at the beginning of a municipal road. So it is vero because SC represent strada comunale. So guys, you see, this man here is learning so well that probably in the future he can even teach this thing. Teach this thing. So my advice to everybody watching, learn well so that tomorrow you start teaching. Yeah. Well done, Mr. Charles. You're doing good. Let's proceed to the number 20. Il segnale raffigurato indica che la strada per Bari è interrotta.
Falso.
Of course, it is false. They say this sign indicate that the road to Bari is closed. Falso, because the sign is just indicating two separate lanes, one on the left to Bari, one going straight to Pescara. So 20 is falso. Excellent. Number 21. Il segnale raffigurato consente la circolazione dei veicoli per il carico e lo scarico merci.
Vero.
Excellent, it is vero. I say this sign allows the circulation of vehicles for loading and unloading goods. It is vero because where is the loading and the unloading? It is down here. Down here. Down here. This is the loading and the unloading. Okay, so that's why the number 21 is vero. Excellent. You're doing good. 22. Il segnale raffigurato indica in 90 km orari il limite massimo di velocità su strade extraurbane secondarie.
Vero.
Excellent, it is vero. He said this sign indicates 90 kilometers per hour as the maximum speed limit on secondary extra urban roads. So 22 is of course vero because as we can see on the secondary extra urban road, the high speed limit is 90 kilometers per hour. That's why 22 is a simple vero. 23. Il segnale. Now listen. If you join with Marvin, the teacher, you see how the studies is so simple. Hmm? So simple. You see? So 23 says, il segnale raffigurato preavvisa che la strada di destra è senza uscita per i veicoli.
Vero.
Of course it is vero. It said this sign warns us that the road on the right is a dead end road for vehicles, which means a road without exit or continuation. So 23 is of course vero, because that is exactly the meaning of the sign we are watching. Very good. Make sure you like the video and you subscribe and join the YouTube channel, which is Simple Marwin DT. Marwin DT. 24. Il segnale raffigurato si trova all'ingresso di un'autostrada. So what's the answer?
Vero, vero, vero.
Why are you saying
No,
vero?
scusa. Falso.
Okay, of course it is
I
falso. You
I
are
know it's falso.
sleeping. You are sleeping. Huh?
It's falso. It's falso. There's nothing like autostrada there.
Exactly. So it is falso because it said this sign is
Yeah.
located at the entrance of the motorway. No, it is not the entrance.
Yeah.
The sign is in the city. So 24
There's
is falso. Very
because
good.
the background is white.
Very
Yeah.
good. 25. Il segnale raffigurato riporta i nomi delle località raggiungibili uscendo dalla strada extraurbana principale.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. It said this sign shows the name of the places that can be reached by exiting the main extra urban road. Yes, it is vero. So when you get outside of Frosinone, these are the cities you can get to at a distance of 500 meters. So 25 is vero. 26. Il segnale raffigurato indica il percorso da fare per prendere la strada di sinistra.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. I say this sign indicate the route to take in order to
To
turn,
exit to the right.
yeah, to
To
take
the
the
right.
right side. So it is of course vero. That's just the direction to take the road on the left. Okay. That's the left side. Okay, so we'll be turning continuously to
Yeah.
the right side in order to get outside. So that's why the 26 is vero. 27. Il segnale raffigurato indica la sede ed il numero telefonico del più vicino comando di polizia stradale. So the right answer is,
Vero.
of course, it is vero. I say this sign
Vero.
indicates the location and telephone number of the nearest police station. Yes, it is vero. So on this sign, you see the details of the police station, the via, and the telephone number. So 27 is a simple vero. 28. Il segnale raffigurato, se posto sul bordo del marciapiede, indica la fermata di uno scuolabus. So the answer is
Vero.
excellent. It is vero. It said this sign, if placed on the edge of the sidewalk, it indicates a school bus stop. Yes, it indicates a school bus stop for kids. So 28 is vero. Well done. 29. Il segnale raffigurato consente la svolta a destra. So what's the answer?
Falso.
No,
Falso.
it
Falso.
is vero. Watch the sign. Watch the sign. It says this sign allows you to turn to the right. You go straight. What's this? You go straight and you turn to the right. Then you turn to the right again. Then you turn to the right again. So it is a simple vero.
Go to the left.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So that's why the 29 is vero, okay? Number 30. Il segnale raffigurato indica un parcheggio per veicoli e fermata di autobus nelle vicinanze.
Vero.
Of course, it is vero. Well done. He said this sign indicates a vehicle parking and a bus stop nearby. It is vero because the parking, the P represents parking, plus the bus stop number 8 and number 45. So the 30 is vero. So, Mr. Charles, what will you say? Are you enjoying the studies? Yes or no?
Sure.
Very
Sure,
good.
yes.
Of course, you are enjoying this, of course. So, will you advise anyone to learn with Marwin the teacher? Yes or no?
Yes, of course. Not if I will advise. I've already started advising people who are close to me. So I preach your gospel.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We thank God. We thank God. God bless you. God bless you.